Hello world, this is Vagabond. During my journey across Vietnam, I'm traveling from north to south, traversing between country's capital city of Hanoi and the Vietnam's largest city of Hошimин. I'm going to visit places where the presence of tough history is still strongly felt. This becomes especially clear when it comes to the Vietnam War, one of the most significant conflicts of the 20th century. Despite being a formerly communist state, Vietnam once managed to ultimately defeat the United States, the world's leading economic power. Today, the country is moving forward, but the memory of that war is still alive, in ruins, museums, memorials, and even the landscape itself. This video is about my journey across the country, in which I aim not only to experience Vietnam as it is today, but also to understand what it was in the past and where it might be headed in the future. Within the next couple of weeks I'm planning to explore this lovely country, and I start my exploration from its capital city, from Hanoi, the city with a population of more than 8 million people, where I'm going to spend the next few days. In Vietnam, people speak Vietnamese language, and unless you learn it intentionally, there is no way you can understand it. So we can see prices for the food. So these kind of cuisines cost 30 to 35k dong. Yeah, so that's basically the local currency. It's called Vietnamese dong. 25,000 dong is $1. So it means that for 30 or 35k you can already have a decent meal. I see quite a lot of antique things for sale, so kind of statues. I like this one actually. It's kind of broken, but I think it's done intentionally. Hошimин, of course, the first communist of Vietnam, under which rule basically the country became independent. Ho Shi Min was a revolutionary leader who led Vietnam's fight for independence from French colonial rule. He later became the founding president of North Vietnam and the symbol of unity during the long struggle to reunify the country. If you want to learn more about his life, the best place to start is Ba Dinh Square in central Hanoi. This is where Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence in 1945 and where his preserved body now rests in the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum. The square itself is spacious and ceremonial. It's surrounded by government buildings and has a quiet, almost solemn atmosphere, especially early in the day. Just a short walk away is the Ho Chi Minh Museum, which offers a broader look at his life from his early travels abroad to his revolutionary activities, political philosophy, and personal lifestyle. You can also visit the still house where Ho Chi Minh lived and see the presidential palace, which he famously refused to live in, preferring a more simple life. Whether you're interested in history or just curious about Vietnam's most iconic figure, this area of Hanoi gives you a deeper understanding of Ho Chi Minh's role, not just in politics, but in the identity of the nation itself. It's clear that some neighborhoods of Hanoi were built up during French rule, just judging by architecture. We can still enjoy that colonial buildings with typical shutters that can be seen in Italy, France, Spain. So I'm just walking down the street, and there is the area designated for badminton, and the guys are basically playing it here on the street. In front of you is a historical military site called D67, located within the Ho Chi Minh Presidential Complex in Hanoi. It's an important spot that played a key role in the Vietnam War, particularly from the North Vietnamese perspective. D67 is a wartime command center built in 1967 during the US bombing campaigns over North Vietnam. It was used by top military officials as the headquarters of the Vietnamese People's Army. The building looks plain on the outside, but it's connected to a reinforced underground bunker designed to resist US airstrikes. And even underground meeting rooms for members of Politburo and the headquarters of the army. This is some of the equipment which was used back in times here by military. Actually, most of these things were sent here from Soviet Union, because you can see the description of these features in Russian language. Northern Vietnam was supported by Soviet Union, that's why some military equipment was sent here by Soviet Union. In the yard of this building we can enjoy some vehicles which were in use by Vietnamese army back in time. And over here is the famous, very famous Russian UAZik, as we call it. It's basically like Russian Jeep, The landmark of Hanoi, which I personally could not miss, is the statue of Lenin. Because Soviet Union supported Northern Vietnam, they eventually erected the monument to Vladimir Lenin here in Hanoi. And currently it's quite a livable place, so aside from the monument, you see local children just play football here. Okay, we've just reached one of the most famous locations in the entire city of Hanoi, the so-called train street. So basically the railway track which crosses the residential area. This narrow street squeezed between homes is an active railway line with trains passing regularly. On both sides of the track, locals have opened numerous restaurants, coffee shops, souvenir shops and other small businesses. As a railway enthusiast, I was curious to see this place, so I arrived before dusk and decided to wait for the evening train while enjoying traditional Vietnamese egg coffee at one of the local coffee shops. This drink is made from strong coffee mixed with whipped egg yolk, sugar and condensed milk. It tasted quite sweet and I liked it after a couple of sips. But when I finished the cup I realized the drink was too sweet. So it's already evening time, approximately 10 to 15 minutes before passing of the train. And yeah, I'm just going to look for a decent spot to catch it. After the train street, I took a short walk around the city in the evening. The atmosphere at that time was especially cozy with the glow of street lights, enormous amount of cheap street food places, and many residents and tourists hanging out after a long day. I tried some beef noodles in a local restaurant, which turned out to be both delicious and affordable. After dinner, I returned to my accommodation to get some rest, as the next day I planned to continue exploring the capital of Vietnam. I liked the train street in Hanoi so much that I decided to start my next day in Vietnam right there. In the morning, I went to the train street with the intention of having breakfast at one of the restaurants facing the railway and watching the train pass by. After that, I spent several hours wandering around Old Hanoi, specifically the city's historic center. I admired the old colonial buildings and soaked in the atmosphere of its narrow, overcrowded streets. In Vietnam, a huge number of people ride mopeds and motorcycles, which creates constant chaos on the roads, endless flows of motorbikes zigzagging in all directions. In addition to simply strolling around and seeing cozy corners and basic landmarks, I also visited some of Hanoi's key attractions. The first stop on my way was the Maison Centrale, also known as Hoa Lo Prison. This dark and historically significant place once held Vietnamese revolutionaries during the colonial period and later American prisoners of the war during the Vietnam War. The museum showcases prison conditions, torture methods, escape attempts, and the prison's political role in Vietnam's history. The atmosphere in the museum is heavy, but prison offers a deep understanding of what the Vietnamese people endured in their struggle for independence. Walking around the streets of Hanoi, I accidentally found Vietnamese mosaic. While walking around Hanoi, I noticed that communist symbolism is quite common throughout the city. You could find the hammer and sickle pretty much everywhere. The hammer and sickle symbolized the unity of industrial workers and peasants. It was widely used in communist countries as an emblem of communist ideology. One place that particularly caught my attention was the Vietnam-Soviet Friendship Cultural Palace, also known as the House of People's Friendship. It was a gift from the Central Council of Trade Unions of the USSR to the Vietnamese trade unions. On the territory of the House of People's Friendship, there is a monument dedicated to Vietnamese workers and communists. The figures on the monument are holding a torch, and in the background, one can see the Vietnamese star, the hammer and sickle, and the generalized image of scientific, technological, and cultural progress. The building itself is a classic example of Soviet-style architecture. Inside, there is a large mural with an abstract composition, typical of the Soviet artistic tradition. This cultural palace stands as a reminder of the close ties between Vietnam and the Soviet Union and serves as a symbol of their friendship and cooperation. We are learning some basics of Vietnamese language with this lovely guy.
Hello, xin chào bạn tôi.
Xin chào bạn tôi means hello my friend.
Tôi. Hello my friend. What's your name?
Ivan.
Ivan. Mr. My name Sun.
Sun.
Sun. 52.
Oh, the guy is 52 years old.
How old? 52. Boy. Girlfriend is a boyfriend. Boy.
Boyfriend is a man, Jin is a son.
Jin? Yeah, there is a very nice guy who basically started talking to me. He happened to be a street hairdresser, street barber, and he's currently showing me the process of smoking tobacco here in Hanoi. This is his personal tube or pipe. It's not even the cigarette. So he puts tobacco here, ignites it.
Tobacco here, some cigarette.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. Good. Very good. So this is what you can get for $1.50 here in Hanoi. This is a huge bowl of noodles with beef, some nuts and salad. Plus, I don't know what's this. Doesn't look like a bouillon, rather sauce. And it's just an iced tea for additional 5,000 dong, which is basically 20 cents. So less than $2 for a reasonable meal. As I continued my walk through Hanoi, exploring the city's landmarks, the next place I visited was the B-52 Victory Museum. This museum is dedicated to Vietnam's air defense efforts during the Vietnam War, with a particular focus on the events of December 1972 during the American bombing campaign known as Operation Linebacker II. Operation Linebacker II, sometimes referred to as the Christmas bombing, was an intensive aerial bombing campaign carried out by the United States between December 18 and December 29, 1972. It was one of the heaviest bombardments of the war and targeted key infrastructure in Hanoi and Haiphong. The operation involved hundreds of B-52 bombers and tactical aircraft dropping thousands of tons of bombs in an attempt to pressure North Vietnam into signing the Paris Peace Accords. Despite the overwhelming firepower, North Vietnamese air defense forces, using Soviet-supplied surface-to-air missiles, radar systems and anti-aircraft artillery, managed to shoot down a bunch of B-52 bombers and other aircraft. The success of the North Vietnamese defense during Linebacker II is a central theme of the B-52 Victory Museum. One of the museum's most striking features is the outdoor exhibition area, where the wreckage of a real B-52 Stratofortress bomber is displayed, along with various surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft guns, and military vehicles used during the conflict. Inside the museum, visitors can find exhibits that trace the broader history of the Vietnamese struggle for independence and national defense, including the First Indochina War and the Vietnam War. The B-52 Victory Museum offers a fascinating glimpse into a chapter of Vietnam's history, especially for those interested in military history and the country's perspective on the war. Well, another day is coming to its logical end. It's evening time in Hanoi, and I can definitely say that I like this city. Even in evening time you can see that it's perfectly illuminated. There is a lot of cafes, restaurants, which are not necessarily expensive. Food is pretty affordable, so the city is so livable. It has cultural heritage. Yeah, I can confirm that Hanoi happened to be beyond my expectations. After spending a few days in Hanoi, the bustling and lively capital of Vietnam, I'm now continuing my journey southward. The next part of my trip will take place on one of the most iconic railway lines in Southeast Asia. I'm about to take the Reunification Express, the train which connects Hanoi and Hoshimin City. In addition to the fact that this is one of the longest passenger rail routes in the region, it also carries historical significance. After the end of the Vietnam War and the reunification of the country in 1976, this train became a symbol of restored unity between North and South Vietnam. Today, it still runs along the coast, covering more than 1,700 kilometers and linking many of the nation's key cities. I don't plan to ride it all in one go. Instead, my journey will be broken into several stages with stops in different towns and regions along the way to explore Vietnam beyond its two major cities. So I'm starting my adventure in the capital city of Vietnam, in Hanoi. Right behind me is the building of the railway station, the main railway station of Hanoi. In 1 hour, basically, the evening train to Hoshimin is departing, and I'm going to take it to the city of Hue. Okay, we've just entered the main lobby of the railway station. Over there we can see the schedule of trains, departure and arrival. So my train is scheduled for 1920, truck number 1, so there is my train basically. Well, the waiting hall is not super huge here, but there are still a bunch of seats where you can just wait for the train. We are on the railway platform. This is platform number 1, and there is our train. It's fairly long, by the way. There are more than 10 passenger wagons, and there are different kinds of wagons. So for example, next to us over here is a sleeping coach, which has 4 bunks over here. There are also sitting carriages and another kind of sleeping coach with 6 bunks. Yeah, look at that, there are 6 bunks. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is actually my wagon number 1. This is the seat carriage, which was probably the cheapest possible wagon in this train. In front of this wagon there is the restaurant wagon, where you can just have a meal or get wasted, for example. Hello, that's the ticket. Thank you. Let me make a quick introduction into the design of this wagon, of this train. So we are currently in this kind of room where the boarding of passengers is going on. And yeah, straight here is the entrance to the bathroom. The bathroom is so tiny. It's very, very small, but it has a sink, the actual toilet, and yeah, that's it. And also an interesting feature is that you can open the window in this kind of compartment of the wagon. Oh, it's just the beginning of the trip, and they already started selling some drinks, some snacks. So it's hard to get hungry at this train. Yeah, so it's a great advantage to be right next to the wagon restaurant, so you will not be hungry. Frequently, conductors, they offer food from wagon restaurants, so you can buy, for example, fried corn, some snacks, some drinks, and it shouldn't be expensive, I believe. I've been riding this train for more than 3 hours. My wagon is half empty right now. So most of the passengers basically got off this wagon in some provincial towns along the way. Yeah, like local time is 11 p.m. and still it's quite a long way to Hue. I think the arrival is scheduled for 8:30 or something, which means that I would need to spend still like more than 9 hours in this train, so I'm basically planning to overnight here. Well, unfortunately, restaurant is closed for the night, so we will not be able to have a party. But at least we can enjoy the views from the open window. Okay, finally I can say good morning. We are approaching the city of Hue. The very interesting feature about this train from Hanoi to Hoshimin is that when we approach some meaningful point, some new region, they basically tell you via the loudspeaker about some interesting places, about the history of this place. So at some point you can also consider this train a tourist train to some extent, because they provide you with some historical background of the area where you travel. It's very nice. Well, we are finally approaching Hue, and the good thing about this passenger train is that it follows the schedule. Okay, so here we are in the city of Hue. The task number 1 is to get to the guest house. The owner of the guest house also told me that they have scooters for rent, and if the rental price is going to be reasonable, I'll just rent one for a day, so you'll be able to explore the surrounding area of Hue. Alright guys, mission success. I've just rented the scooter, and this is going to be my transport for today. So the point of today's adventure is to see some of the sites of the Vietnamese War. The very first stop on our way is going to be Vietnamese Memorial Cemetery. A lot of events of the Vietnamese-American War were happening here in the area around Hue, I found the cemetery of the Vietnamese soldiers just north of Hue, where the former demilitarized zone lied. It was the dividing line between North and South Vietnam. Today, it's a quiet, green landscape, but during the war, this was one of the most heavily bombed and fiercely contested front lines. Well, the cemetery seems to be well organized and nicely maintained. Just look at this alley with palm trees on both sides of it. Artificial body of water which surrounds military fort, same one surrounds the cemetery. Even though Vietnam War was going on from 50s to 70s of 20th century, actually it's not that much time ago. There are still people who participated in that war. I mean, they're around us here in Vietnam, so the memory of heroes of that war is still alive, obviously. The entrance to the cemetery is marked by two pagodas. On the right one there is the massive bell. That's the actual bell, and this toll is used to hit this bell over here. And there is the actual cemetery. As we can see, all of the gravestones are literally the same, which is typical for military cemeteries all around the world. So I see that some people died in 60s, some died in 70s, so there are mixed years that were buried here. And this is the main monument, situated in the very center of the cemetery. In the central monument there is the worship place or something. Apparently I just made it to my next destination. This village was mentioned as a traditional Vietnamese village. Yeah, I mean, it's traditional of course, but it's also a communist one. Is it the monument to communism, to socialism? Let's try to figure it out. So here in October 1930, the Communist Party in Phuoc Thic was officially established. This was the first Communist Party cell in this settlement. Yeah, so it's basically the monument to the first Communist Congress or something, or to the organization of the first Communist Party in this village. It's such a sweet place. The village is surrounded by the river, so it's so peaceful and enjoyable to see local views from this small road. It's actually one of the streets of the village, so yeah, I'm just looking for some life going on here, I don't know. Strangely enough, I don't see people here. I've just seen only one scooterist, and that's it. That's an actual temple. Here we can see some offerings, some form of donation which people bring to Buddhist churches, Buddhist temples. There is the carpet for praying apparently, and that's the interior. You can see some candles, so probably people have just been here. Exploring Google Maps a couple of days ago, I randomly found the ruins of Catholic Church, which we can see in front of us right now. A remarkable moment about this church is that there are some kind of bullet holes or something, so potentially it was damaged during the Vietnamese War. But what's even more spectacular is that behind this ancient Catholic church, they have just built another Catholic church. But the thing is that it doesn't have a shape of Catholic church. It has a shape of Buddhist temple with the massive cross on its top. On my way from Hue, I randomly found this huge unfinished church that looked like a Buddhist temple. It turned out to be La Vang Sanctuary, the holiest Catholic site in Vietnam. Legend says the Virgin Mary appeared here in the 1700s during a time when Catholics were hiding in the jungle from persecution. This modern basilica is being built to honor that moment, blending Christian faith with Vietnamese architectural style. The original basilica was indeed destroyed during the Vietnam War, particularly during the fighting around the DMZ, Demilitarized Zone. Just found another memorial to the victims of the Vietnam War. This one is interesting. It has actual blood drops in its composition. After visiting the Catholic pilgrimage center of La Vang, I continued heading toward the nearest town, Quang Chi, getting closer and closer to what used to be the demilitarized zone. The demilitarized zone was a narrow strip of land about 5 kilometers wide on either side of the 17th parallel, running along the Ben Hai River. From 1954, it served as a temporary division between North and South Vietnam. Officially, it was meant to be a neutral area, but in reality, it became the site of some of the fiercest battles of the Vietnam War. The closer I got to the demilitarized zone, the more signs of the past I started to notice. Right in the center of Quang Chi, I came across the ruins of the Bode School, one of the few remaining structures from the wartime era. Founded by Buddhist monks in 1959, the school once had over 1,000 students. But in 1972, during the North Vietnamese Easter Offensive, it ended up at the heart of the conflict. The building was severely damaged by shelling. Bullet holes and shrapnel scars still cover the walls. The condition of this building is so devastated. Every single corner of it was shelled. At the same time, next to it currently is a newly built villa, so people just live around it. From Quang Chi, I continued my journey north. At one point, right by the roadside next to a private home, I stumbled upon a curious little open-air museum. Someone, likely a local enthusiast, had collected and displayed old bombs, shells and mines, all found in the surrounding area. It's an improvised exhibit, but it silently tells a powerful story. Even today, remnants of the war are still being uncovered in Vietnam. The final stop on my trip through the former demilitarized zone was the Vinh Mok tunnels. This underground complex was built by the villagers of Vinh Mok in 1966 to survive intense US bombing campaigns. Over 2 kilometers of tunnels were dug here, arranged across 3 levels, the deepest reaching down to 30 meters. Inside, there were 17 entrances and exits, rooms for 60 families, a maternity ward, kitchens, a medical station, and even a meeting hall. The walls were left unreinforced. The local red clay is so dense that it naturally resists water and erosion. Thanks to these tunnels, an entire village was able to survive and continue life underground. Of course, the system of tunnels was eventually discovered by enemy's army, and it was targeted by bombs, air bombs, and this is basically one of the craters which was created by the hit of the bomb at this point. Third floor. Apparently they are counted the opposite way, so the third floor should be the deepest one. That is the water well, the actual source of water. Yeah, it's just like underground water. What can I say? Yeah, and it's basically flooding the entire passage. Look, we can even see signatures of people who were here. Bathroom. Wow. Apparently some underground water squeezes through these walls, which basically creates an opportunity to bath. This specific passage is flooded by the water which is coming from the well. That's why some bricks were put here, so we can step on them. But interestingly enough, guys, even though we reached the deepest level apparently, we can still see the exit from here to the outside world. Let's see, where is this exit leading? Okay, so it's leading straight to the coastline actually. That's the embankment of the South China Sea. And one of the passages is leading to the tunnels. So I'm happy to announce the fact that I successfully reached Hue. I'm finally going to have a meal today. It's going to be the first food consumption since early morning. So I just went to a local shopping mall, to Pizza Hut specifically, and ordered pepperoni pizza and kind of the mojito for me. So this day was great. I've covered a lot of ground by driving the scooter all around the surrounds of Hue. And I still have some time in the evening, so I decided to get to the old town of Hue to see what nightlife here is. I already see that there are some clubs or decent bars at least where you can grab a drink or something. Yeah, there is quite a lot of people, I must admit. Okay. Okay. Looks not bad. You see, it's pretty crowded right now, so pretty much all of the seats in these cafes and bars are occupied. Many bars, restaurants, and these kind of entertainment places. Hello. But you can also buy some souvenirs here, for example. I mean, a lot of fancy places. I mean, they look pretty nice, look good. so probably if you're into these kind of things, you can definitely visit them. Before coming here, I only knew that yes, there is this city in Vietnam, and that's it. I had no idea how it looks. I expected something more rundown, but in the reality, it's pretty nice. Way better developed than I expected. Yeah, thumbs up for this province of Vietnam, thumbs up for Vietnam in general. Yeah, I believe this country has a good future. Good morning in Hue. Yesterday I went to sleep early and I woke up at 5:30, which gave me a great opportunity to explore some of the places in Hue which I missed yesterday because I arrived to the city later than I expected. First, I headed to the south of the city to the site of an abandoned water park. This place is known for its massive dragon-shaped structure. According to some sources, it was supposed to be a water slide, although I don't have exact information. Today it's a popular photo spot and it really does look impressive. You can easily walk inside the dragon, but it's even more fascinating to observe it from the outside. However, my main destination that morning was not the water park. It was the tomb of Khai Dinh. Khai Dinh was the 12th emperor of the Nguyen dynasty, ruling from 1916 to 1925. His tomb in Hue combines traditional Vietnamese elements with European architectural influences. The tomb is richly decorated with mosaics, bas-reliefs and chambers, making it one of the most unique imperial mausoleums in Vietnam. You may ask, why the emperor's tomb is in Hue and not in Hanoi? The thing is that Hue was the capital of Vietnam during the reign of the Nguyen dynasty, the country's last imperial dynasty. So the imperial citadel was located here. Walking around these places feels like a true journey back in time to the final chapter of Vietnam's monarchy. My short visit to Hue is almost over. I'm currently walking to the railway station to take a local train to Da Nang. So Hue happened to be a very nice city with beautiful center, with some historical places. Also the province surrounding Hue was full of historical artifacts associated with the Vietnam War, and I enjoyed exploring them. So next destination is going to be Da Nang, the city which is situated just 100 kilometers south of Hue. Time to say goodbye to Hue. I'm currently staying next to its railway station. Gonna take a local train to Da Nang. The journey is going to take 3.5 hours. The train from Hue to Da Nang is probably the most scenic rail journey in Vietnam. This stretch is a part of the North-South railway line that runs from Hanoi to Hoshimin city. The highlight of this stretch is the Hai Wan Pass, where railway tracks cling to the coastline, winding through mountains and cliffs that drop straight into the sea. Built during the French colonial era, this railway is both an engineering achievement and a scenic ride through stunning landscapes. Okay, my train just made it to Da Nang. This is the terminus of this passenger train. I'm going to spend basically one day in this city to see some basic sites, and that's it. Challenge accepted, guys. I have to cross the street somehow. There is no sign of the pedestrian crossing. There is just zebra and constantly moving flow of vehicles, specifically scooters. Okay, the first lane passed. The second one, yeah, it's a bit more tricky, so I should just start walking probably. Yeah, just gradually, yeah, like this. You see, they slow down when they see me. From the train station, I decided to walk to my hotel. Da Nang actually turned out to be quite nice. A typical Vietnamese vibe with street markets, mopeds, and that chaotic but lively rhythm of the life. That evening, I stopped by the riverside just to take a break. There is a famous dragon bridge here that lights up beautifully at night. Right there on the promenade, I saw a group of locals, mostly middle-aged and older, dancing to music in the open air. It didn't feel like a touristy performance, just regular people enjoying their evening. In that moment I realized I really liked Da Nang. There's not so many things to do in Da Nang, that's why I just decided to check into my hotel. Let me show you around the place, which I booked for $6. Even though it was one of the cheapest hotel options on booking.com, it's just incredibly nice. Look at that. This is a spacious room with 2 decent beds, basically. Spacious bathroom. Of course, it's not perfect. You can see that some parts are not entirely fixed, but still, Like all of the amenities are available here. At least they seem to be. Towels, kettle, some snacks are also available. There are so many cheap hotels in Da Nang. For 15 bucks, for example, you could definitely have hotel room with the seaside view, for example. I just didn't care about that and actually missed this opportunity. I should have booked something with the seaside view just for fun because it's still cheap. But anyway, it's also nice, so I'm pretty satisfied with my choice. And the next morning, I went straight to the sea. Just a few minute walk and I was on the wide sandy beach. The waves were pretty strong that day, so I didn't swim. But the view was great. From a certain angle, the city reminded me of Rio-de-Жанейро, Brazil, which I actually never visited. Hello, can I have a coconut? One. Okay. Oops. Thank you. It's 30,000, right? I think right now I have the most touristy look ever that you ever seen on my channel. Damn coconut t-shirt with marine species and seafood. Beach holiday with vagabond. The coconut is actually nice. Costs just a little bit more than $1. Well, it's probably off the season here right now because it's like a rain season, as far as I know, but still, it's very nice. I went for a short walk along the beach, but quickly realized I didn't have the energy for more. That day I actually woke up with a fever, so I returned to the hotel to rest and recover. My exploration of Da Nang was limited to the area between the train station and the coast, but even that was enough to leave a warm impression. The next day I felt much better and continued my journey south, heading for Hoshimin city, the final stop on my Vietnam trip. Okay, here we are in the wagon. I have an upper bunk. There are totally 6 bunks. There is middle one as well. There is the small table like in Russian trains. It has the light which is working. It's time to sleep. Hopefully I managed to do so. It's gonna be a long journey. 19 hours. Bloody hell. I had a 19-hour train journey from Da Nang to Hoshimin city, riding the final stretch of the reunification express. I was still feeling under the weather, so I spent most of the time laying down and resting. However, I did explore the restaurant car and ordered a simple meal, rice with an omelette and pork. The rest of the time, I simply watched the landscapes pass by through the window. I see that they have a field of wind turbines somewhere between Nha Trang and Hoshimin, like wind generators. So yeah, green energy also exists here in Vietnam. In the evening, after night had fallen, the train arrived at its final destination, Saigon. Although the city is officially named Hoshimin City, the railway station still goes by its old name, Saigon. Upon arrival, I checked into my hotel and spent the rest of the day there, hoping to recover from my sickness. The following day, I set out to explore Vietnam's largest city. So I'm planning to spend 4 days here, and during this time we'll just explore different places in Hoshimin and probably in its surrounding area. So currently we are on the walking street of Hoshimin, which is actually dead during daytime. I mean, it looks like an ordinary street with a bunch of closed restaurants and cafe. But the thing is that they're open later in the evening, so during daytime it's just an ordinary street, but when sun gets down it becomes a pure party place. And we'll come here in the evening anyway because my hotel is situated somewhere around this place, so I just randomly settled here in the very center of evening's actions. Like everywhere in Vietnam you can see tons of motorbikes. Not surprising, it's the major kind of transportation here. The modern day skyline of the center of Saigon/Hoshimin is represented by classic Vietnamese mix of Vietnamese architecture and colonial one, with some new business centers. This is the financial center of the entire southern Vietnam. Many companies are based here in Hoshimin, so economically it's a fairly developed city. Here we go with one of the most iconic buildings of Hoshimin. This is the City Hall. So it was constructed in early 20th century by French colonizers of Vietnam. And by the way, the city of Hoshimin was called Saigon up until 1975 because that was the year when Vietnam War was over and northern and southern Vietnam were reunited.
But still, interestingly enough, many people call Hoshimin Saygon. Even though it's been almost 50 years since the end of the war and the official renaming of the city, there is an open-air exhibition of some military equipment which was deployed to Vietnam in times of the Vietnam War. On the left is the Chinese tank. I don't know its model exactly. That is a Soviet tank class T-54. The remarkable fact about this Independence Palace is that on April 30, 1975, basically the entrance to the palace was just smashed by one of these tanks, and that marked the fall of Saigon and eventually the end of the Vietnam War. So the fact that the tank entered the Independence Palace was quite symbolical because it was the central command center of Southern Vietnam Army. So it was Northern Vietnam tank which entered this palace. There is a great opportunity to visit this Independence Palace, so you just buy a ticket for less than $2 and you can get in. Actually, I like the architecture of this Independence Palace. It looks like something coming from 20th century exactly. We can enjoy the interior of many rooms here. Many of them were designed for gatherings or meetings. Wide corridors, a lot of space. This palace was actually bombed in 1975, less than a month before the fall of Saigon, and that bombardment of the palace actually marked the focal point in the presence of American military in southern Vietnam. So it basically encouraged American troops to withdraw from southern Vietnam, which eventually led to the fall of southern Vietnam and subsequent reunification of the country. Another remarkable place in Hoshimin is the War Remnants Museum, where we can enjoy some military equipment which was used in this war, in Vietnam War.
While walking through Ho Chi Minh City, I visited the War Remnants Museum, one of the most well-known museums in Vietnam, dedicated to the consequences of the Vietnam War. Located in the city center, it presents the Vietnamese perspective on a conflict that claimed millions of lives and left a lasting mark on the country's history. Outside the entrance are various military artifacts, American helicopters, tanks, bombers, and artillery. These are remnants of the war, either left behind after the conflict or captured by the North Vietnamese army. Visitors can examine them as a part of an open-air exhibition. Inside, the museum is divided into several thematic sections. One room presents a photographic chronicle of the war. A separate section focuses on the impact of chemical warfare used by the US military. One of the most notorious chemicals was Agent Orange, a herbicide and defoliant sprayed over forests to eliminate the cover for guerrilla fighters. It contained dioxin, a highly toxic compound known to cause severe health issues. Agent Orange exposure led to cancers, skin diseases, immune system disorders, and most tragically, severe birth defects in children. These effects are still felt today, both among war veterans and subsequent generations. The museum presents a North Vietnamese perspective with a strong anti-war message. Nevertheless, it offers valuable documentation of events that are often viewed from different angles.
Welcome to the book street of Saigon. It's an interesting concept which I haven't found in other Vietnamese cities. So it's basically the street with a number of bookstores. So you can find literature on different topics here. You can also find literature in foreign languages, so there are books in English, but still many bookstores provide books in Vietnamese, of course, because it's Vietnam. Enjoying the streets of Saigon, the biggest city of pretty capitalist economy of Vietnam. You can see a very interesting poster. It's the reminder of the anniversary of October Revolution. On 7th November of 1917, it was the beginning of that October Revolution in Russia/Soviet Union. It's one of the, I don't know, remarkable date for Vietnam apparently, or at least for Vietnam politicians, I don't know, who actually posted it and who actually cares about it here. At some point the traffic in Ho Chi Minh becomes too heavy, so people just naturally drive their scooters on sidewalks like no one cares. So good luck being a pedestrian here, they are not respected.
The next remarkable stop on my journey through Ho Chi Minh City was Landmark 81, the tallest building in Vietnam. Standing at 461 meters, it's a symbol of the country's modern era. At the top, there is an observation deck offering breathtaking panoramic views of the city. From here, you can clearly see how rapidly Ho Chi Minh is growing. After sunset, I stopped by a local restaurant and had a traditional Vietnamese pho bo, beef noodle soup with fresh herbs and thin slices of beef. It's one of the Vietnam's most beloved dishes. Later in the evening, I headed to Bui Vien Street, also known as Hoshimin Walking Street. At night, the place really comes alive with neon signs, bars with live music, strip clubs, cafes and restaurants, and crowds of both tourists and locals. If you're looking for nightlife in Ho Chi Minh City, this is the place to go. The next day, I traveled north of the city to visit two important historical sites connected to the Vietnam War. The first stop was the Ban Dinh Tunnels, part of a vast underground network where northern Vietnamese fighters conducted operations against the US Army.
Magic.
Here you can see the narrow passageways, kitchens, hideouts and ventilation shafts, all hand dug and located up to 10 meters underground. These tunnels served as shelters, storage areas and bases for guerrilla warfare.
The tunnels were created that tiny intentionally so they could only feed Vietnamese soldiers that were naturally small.
Next, I arrived at the Cu Chi Tunnels, one of the most famous historical sites in Vietnam. At the Cu Chi Tunnel sites, visitors can observe several pieces of American military equipment left behind from the Vietnam War. Notably, there is a destroyed M41 light tank, which was reportedly disabled by a landmine during the conflict. Additionally, a UH-1 helicopter is on display, representing the type commonly used by US forces for troop transport and medical evacuations. The entire tunnel network stretches over 250 kilometers. Underground, there were military amenities, infrastructure facilities, and even living quarters. These tunnels became a symbol of the resilience of the Vietnamese fighters who used them to evade bombings and launch surprise attacks.
There is the bomb crater. Bomb class B-52 hit this area once, and this is what happened afterwards.
That's it for Vietnam. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps me motivated to create more content. Also, if you'd like to see exclusive travel content, check out my Patreon page, where I share footage and stories that aren't available anywhere else. The link is in the description. See you in the next episode.